What I'm going to show you right now is how to do what I call a pouring, which is basically liquid mediums and acrylic paint poured together, and I'm going to do that on a sheet of plastic. Now this plastic is kind of a medium grade plastic. It's actually part of a bag that's used to store art in. But you can use the heavier duty dry cleaner bags. You can use any kind of heavy plastic really. I've even used shower curtains, like a really inexpensive shower curtain. Get something that's fairly heavy. If you use a lightweight dry cleaner bag, it's not a problem unless it gets a hole in it. One of the things I'd suggest before you start this process is that you cover the floors and the tables, because we're working with liquid medium and liquid paint. Sometimes it goes all over the place. And make sure that you think about that too with what you wear, because acrylics do not come out of anything ever. So we're going to start out. I've laid the plastic down on the table. This is a piece of foam core board, which you should be able to get. Cheap Joe's has it here. It's just the most inexpensive one, really. It doesn't matter what the board is like. It just has to be something that's rigid. So you could even use a thick piece of cardboard if you wanted to. So I'm going to take the plastic and I'm going to tape it to the foam core board. And it doesn't have to be pretty. I'm using a thicker tape just because it'll hold. Now I'm going to use this over and over and over. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a few minutes. But once you prepare one of the surfaces, you can use it for quite some time. So it's a really good idea to take a little bit of time to prepare it and make sure, the main thing you want to make sure of is that the plastic is on there and it is stretched so that you don't have a lot of wrinkles. In the corners, I just try and put together. You can get this tape pretty much anywhere. This tape is, if you're not familiar with it, sold in the paint supply area of any kind of place that sells house paint. And it's used for painters, use it to tape places where they don't want to get tape, say around windows or on the floor, around the baseboards, that kind of thing. The reason I'm using this particular tape is that it's low stick, and if I want to peel it off the board, it won't completely destroy the board. But there again, if you want to use regular masking tape, it doesn't really matter. Now, there are 4 types of mediums that I use. I've used them all. I'm going to show you how to use them all. They all have their pluses and their minuses, so we're going to talk about that. You can also combine them. You don't have to use a medium by itself. You can combine it with another medium. You can add a little water. This is kind of messy, but that's okay. Okay, I think we're done with it. And now I've got a surface that's got a little bit of wrinkles, but that's not a big deal. It just has to be fairly sturdy. Now, this is a pouring medium. What's that? I like pouring mediums. That's probably my favorite. The only problem with it is it's very thin, and so it's the one that gets away from you the most easily, I think. And then I've got the matte medium here, and it's a little bit thicker. This one's open. Here's one that's open. But these are Liquitex. This is what they look like. When you paint with them, they have different different purposes, but you don't necessarily need to know that with this. So, matte medium. I'm just going to stick a little bit in the middle of the canvas, or not, it's not a canvas, the board. You can thin it with a little water if you want. Sometimes I do, but it's not really necessary. I'm going to use one of these Liquitex palette knives, and I'm just going to spread it out a little bit. You don't want it too thick. Well, it depends on what you're doing with it. So maybe you want it thick, but I don't usually use it too thick because it's easier when you're collaging with them. It's easier to have a little bit thinner. So I'm just spreading it out. It doesn't have to be any particular thickness. Remember not to make it too thin, because if you make it too thin, it will just go all over, and it'll keep spreading. Even the thicker medium. The matte medium is the thickest medium. It's the easiest one to work with. It's also the one that when you're trying to collage with it, it's just easier to work with in a lot of ways. It's not as sticky. It doesn't have, you can paint on top of it more easily than with a pouring medium or a glazing medium. So these are things that, really the thing to do is to get the different mediums and play with them, experiment. Take some time, really experiment before you decide which one you like and what you want to do with it. There's tons of things you can do with them. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my paints. I'm using primarily Liquitex, golden colors here. This is what they look like. It comes in all kinds of yummy colors. I love color, obviously. I use every one in the book. Cheap Joe sells all these. They come in two sizes. This is the smaller size. I think it's 4 ounce. Yeah, 4 ounce. This is the 8 ounce. They also come in I think it's either 1 or 2 ounce size, a really little one. But frankly, I would get a larger size. By the time you figure out the cost difference, it's pretty huge. And also, if you're going to be doing very much of this, it's just less wasteful environmentally to use a larger size. So that's what those look like. I'm going to use a few. These are some colors that I've mixed up that I just didn't have in the golden. And I'm going to be using these. These are Cheap Joe's paints. That's what they look like. They're mixed with matte medium. So what I'm going to do is something kind of strange. I have these clay sculpting tools. That's what they are, which you can get. They're for sculpting clay. I also occasionally use tools that are used for wood carving, but I don't have any of those with me today. But I'm going to be using just a couple of different clay sculpting tools. Try different things. Try palette knives. You can try forks. I've tried using nails. You can use toothpicks. You can use all different kinds of things to do this. So think of just every time you're going through your day, pick up something. There's just lots of stuff you can use in any process really, but especially in this one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about combining colors. Now I'm not going to use colors that are at the opposite end of the spectrum, because when you're combining them, they're going to mix. So if you took green and red and put it together, depending on what you're doing now, it could turn out to be brown. You don't want brown, you want green and red. So I am going to use colors that are complementary to each other, that are in the same area in the color wheel. So I'm going to concentrate on blues because I love blues, obviously. Now you can see that have golds in here and blues, but these are from 2 separate pourings, so I didn't do those all in the same pouring. So I'm going to just drop color. I don't have any science to this. I don't have any particular, this is not something that requires huge amounts of skill. I'm just dropping color. That's the ultramarine. This is a cobalt teal. Now the color kind of blobs out of these bottles. One of the things that I like about these color applicator bottles, where you get them from hairdressers or hair salons, is you can do little tiny drops of color with that, which is nice. So I'm going to put in some portrait pink for no particular reason, but just because I like it. And I think it kind of looks nice with the blue. It's a little bit harder to get out of this bottle. Oops, there's a big blob. There are no mistakes though. You don't really have to worry about that. And it's kind of pretty the way it sits on top of this. Now all these mediums will dry clear. The matte medium, which is the medium I'm using, actually dries a little more opaque than the other ones. It's just got kind of a frosted look to it. The other mediums, all of the other mediums, the gloss, the pouring medium, and the glazing medium all dry very clear, almost like you're working on glass. This is Titan Buff. I don't use a lot of white. I prefer to use Payne's Gray for black and a Titan Buff, or what they call an unbleached titanium for the white, just because I just like a little bit of a cream more than a white. Sometimes I use white, but not very often. This is a turquoise phthalo, and that just means that it's got a little bit of green in it. Now what I'm looking for here is contrast. I'm looking for colors that will work well together, but yet aren't the same. So we're just still dropping, lots of color. I think I'm going to use a little bit more of the cobalt teal. I really like teal. Teal is my favorite color if I have one. I use a lot of it. And this is a particularly pretty shade of teal. And maybe some of this violet. This is the Cheap Joe's that's mixed with the medium. You don't have to buy the liquid paints. You can. They are a little bit more expensive than, say, buying a tube paint and mixing it. You can mix it with water too. I usually use mediums when I mix, but I've used water. You don't want it to get real thin, but if you don't use too much water, it works great. So I have this very simple little design. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this clay sculpting tool, and I'm just going to show you how you can just move the paint around. I probably don't have quite enough paint, but I can go back and add it. I want to just get started moving the paint around. That's the fun part. So you just move it, move it, move it. And just get lost in it. Just sort of, it's a great meditation. When I'm having kind of a bad day and painting seems like it's too hard, or too much work, then I'll do this. I've got a lot of these. And I keep them stored. You can store them in between wax paper or freezer paper, or in between sheets of plastic. A lot of times I keep them just taped to the board until I'm ready to use them, and then you can just stack them. Now, the one thing that you need to know about doing this process is you do need some room, because you need to be able to let them dry. I've ruined a lot of them by being impatient or needing them out of my way, and I finally just set aside an area with some tables set up, that I just leave them to dry. And I found that the longer they dry, the easier they are to work with. Why that is, I don't know. But I've got some that are several months old and they're very easy to work with. So you could keep doing this and keep doing this and keep adding color until you got a very dense pattern. You can do a pattern if you want. I'm not doing a particular pattern. I'm just doing random just stuff, just to show you what's going on. So I'm going to take the matte medium again. I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to put another little area down, not too big. So I'm going to use basically the same colors because I want to show you that something here. So I'm going to just kind of put more color down, and I'm going to move a little faster because you get the idea as to how to put the color down. Just doesn't matter how it's put down. Now another thing you can do that's fun is do this on top of a mirror. I've got some mirrors that they're different when they're on a mirror too for some reason. I don't know why, but they tend to be thinner for one thing, I guess because they just spread a little better. I think the glass must have less resistance than the plastic. So I think that's good. So let me show you this, how this makes it a little bit different. This is another clay sculpting tool. And instead of moving it around with this sharp tool, which could be a nail or a toothpick, by the way, I'm going to do this. There again, the paint moves together, but because it's in the matte medium, which is your thicker medium, it does not mix. But it just makes these really cool, interesting surfaces. So, isn't that neat? That shows you the two differences just with the same medium, the same colors, but different tools.